Welcome to 4C Radio. We are broadcasting from the central campus of Christ University, Bangalore. 4C Radio is brought to you by the Department of Media Studies, Christ University. For all those who are looking for a platform that focuses on communities, commons, climate, and communication, this is the place to be. What's more, this station is run by a diverse community of students and dedicated faculty. Tune in to experience hard-hitting interviews, fact checks, myth-busting, on-ground stories, campus news, and more. Last week, we heard from a student journalist who reported on the massive tree felling at Gachibowli near Hyderabad. This week, we're digging deeper. Joining us is Dr. Padmakumar MM from Christ University, an expert in climate communication and the director for Center for Peace Praxis. In this conversation with Dr. Padmakumar and Vernika Singh, we'll unpack the bigger picture, how these environmental issues are reported, how audiences respond, and what this means for climate action in our cities.
So, Professor, we'll be talking about Gachibowli issue initially, and then I'm going to talk about recent research projects that you have undertaken. And when you look at an issue like Gachibowli, how does that make you feel as somebody who's very enthusiastic about climate?
It's really sad. Educational spaces should not just train the students in terms of the disciplinary context alone. They should also be spaces for providing an overarching idea about the world that we are going to be part of. For instance, we need to realize that there's a co-owned world. It's not a human-owned world, though that's a predominant orientation that many of us are getting. Universities should be spaces where there should be a broad outlook. So as a co-owned world, we need to remember that there are more than 8 lakh species that are coexisting with us. And HCU was a great demonstration of it in terms of the flora and fauna it was hosting. I've been there and I've seen peacocks, and I've been told by some of my friends that they've got pythons on campus, that they have got deer on campus, and so many bird species out there. So that's a great environment to understand that we are part and parcel of a system that is interconnected. Sad that respect for interconnectedness of life has not been acknowledged in the right way.
Do you think about the Supreme Court decision that came about Gachibowli issue, sir?
So right now, there is stalemate. There is a stopping of the cutting of the wood, which is temporarily something that makes us feel good. But then there should be more rigorous policies that prevent such interventions. And that chopping a tree is a kind of a killing, actually. And we can't validate it in the name of development. That's unfair. Let's also remember that trees have been here for millennia, almost 4 billion years. We are in a country where we used to worship, we still worship trees and plants and animals and birds and mountains and water bodies. Now that reverence for nature is a value in itself, and I guess it's time that we respect the values with which our grandparents associate with nature and deal with our present and the future. Even science very clearly tells us that all of these have a huge role to play. So we need to get the wisdom of the past and the rigor and logic that science provides and make sense of our times and spaces.
And when we talk about development in recent time, it's just more about building more concretes over concrete and cutting down trees. And this incident mainly happened because they wanted to expand IT sector. So what do you think that how, as a young profession, how should we conceptualize the concept of development?
So this idea of development itself is pretty skewed. And even when they say sustainable development, as Ashish Nandi would put it, it's not the sustaining of resources. It's most often sustaining the developmental projects that they are trying to prioritize, and they use sustainable development as an excuse. Yeah. So most often development tends to have a very profit-oriented approach and does not acknowledge that there are long-term impacts that it is bound to have. So prioritizing developmentalist project over the need of our times is absolutely unconvincing. And it's even more worrying in a time when there is a climate emergency. We are not like what the world was 20 years ago or 50 years ago or 100 years ago. There is a radical departure from the good old days. And it is frequently made aware to us in different forms. For example, flash floods. You have flash droughts, which are not happening because of this gentle cycle, but it's because of a human intervention. It's mostly a man-made intervention. And it is very clear. The Wayanad landslides is an excellent example of how it was impending for a very long time, and it happened. And the loss of lives to the destruction of nature to many things are deeply worrying. And if we still go about this old idea that development is the need of the hour and all that, we are just fooling ourselves.
So do you think there's a blind spot when it comes to covering news like localized environmental news and all the other environment-related news that we see?
Yes, there is a lack of eco-literacy, I would say, amongst the journalistic community. By and large, there are some journalists who are doing an extraordinary work by raising the level of eco-consciousness. That's definitely there. But most of the journalists, unfortunately, are not trained to acknowledge the kind of challenges that ecology is facing today. For example, when it comes to gender, there is a great amount of progression that we have had in the past 2 decades, right? So that's very evident. But when it comes to ecology, the learning curve is unfortunately missing, and the kind of coverage that they do is an exhibition of their ignorance most often, which means it is going to have a bad impact on the people who are going to receive it as well. Because if they are poorly informed or if they are misinformed, then that's going to be owned by many people in a problematic way, which could lead to further challenges.
You spoke about policy as well in this answer, sir. So what do you think as a local government should work towards conserve trees and also protect the environment in general as well?
Okay, so there are green cities. Singapore is an excellent example of a green city, right? Not as though Singapore lacks development. So they have their own developmental intervention, but they also have clarity about how to ensure their own ecology. We need to have such plans. It's not in the form of trying to prioritize economy over ecology. That's not the right thing to do. Both matter, but actually ecology matters more. And the kind of service, let's say, a tree does is unfortunately not quantified. But if we quantify and if we likewise have eco-service measurement for what a tree does, let's say a plant does, what a bird does, then we'll understand that there is so much of wealth that we can't even understand in terms of money. It's priceless. We need to have our own ways of acknowledging it and create policies for it. Let's say if trees are cut, these are the consequences. More than punitive interventions, we need to have progressive interventions. For instance, we need to have clarity that if we have these many humans, we need to have these many trees. And we need to know that these are the species that are threatened and these are the ways in which we can protect. There is conservation science which gives us clear data and clear directions about what we need to do. It's just that the political class has to listen and respond proactively.
And when you see countries like United States pulling out of Paris Accord, how do you think that's going to shape the future of our world in accepting that there is a problem with climate and we are facing an issue right now?
Massive. A country like US has so much of political and economic clout that can determine the destiny of our collective good in some way or the other. It's really depressing that they are making such a call which is not informed by science, not informed by logic, not informed by the will to have a better future. But hopefully this should provoke more people to take charge of it, not expect the state alone to decide their future. They should have a kind of a state which works for our collective good, and interventions of global citizens who mean well for our collective good should be there, and that's what we aspire for.
So I want to talk about, sir, how big corporate companies, they think that environment is their canvas and they can just destroy it as they want. And we talked about the Unilever issue as well and them polluting lake. And there's a very famous show as well, Simpsons, where you see that the power plant factory is destroying the nature as well. So when you talk about something like this, and then in contrast to that, you see the Green Ball initiative in the recent IPLs, and you see BCCI and Tata Group working to plant more trees. What do you think about this, sir? And why do you think companies go towards the second approach where they have to prove that, yes, they are protecting the environment, not just destroying it?
There was a phase when the corporates were some of the other coming in conflict with nature were in a state of denial, saying that that's not a problem and this is more important. And those were the positions that they were most often taking. But thankfully now the awareness that climate is important, nature is important, has dawned upon most of our societies. And so it's not a state of denial. Climate denialism has significantly come down. But on the other hand, there is a lot of greenwashing that has taken over, trying to say that we too are contributing and showcasing only those good aspects, but hiding, brushing under the carpet, a lot of bad interventions that their own work might indulge in, right? So that is happening. So I hope that there will be a phase of maturation of policy, of practices, which help us to not treat the environment as something that does not have a role to play, but that is central to our very existence. That's the truth. And hope big organizations, big governments realize it and treat it the way it ought to be treated. Yeah.
What do you mean by peace when it comes to Anthropocene? And we know that there's an ecological collapse that is happening and environment loss is part of our life. So how can we deal with a reality like this?
Ecology and peace are so integral for our well-being, right? How can I be at peace when I'm not able to breathe fresh air? In a city like Delhi, you know that a person's lifespan can be reduced by 5 to 10 years just by inhaling the oxygen polluted air that they are having access to. And a lot of people have so many respiratory problems in those countries. When that is the dominant reality, how can they be at peace with one's own self? So there is a major challenge over there, right? So peace with one's own self is dependent on peace with our own surrounding, which means we'll have to take care of our surrounding. That's one. Second, there is also bound to be a lot of interpersonal and societal communal conflict for sharing of natural resources. We know how river water sharing between states, between countries has been a problem. Or for the matter, sharing of other resources. It could be minerals to, it could be sharing borders to land to this and that. How we relate with nature is bound to have its own contribution to peace or conflict. How do we deal with animals that are considered to be pests, considered, not necessarily pests, but they're considered to be pests? How do we deal with elephants in the Wayanad belt, let's say? How do we deal with viruses? And likewise, how we live with other beings. That is also another important aspect when it comes to ecological peace. How do we deal with mosquitoes? How do we deal with a variety of species? Yeah. So given these kind of contexts that we are part of, we need to have a very mature way of responding. We need to not just look at it from a pragmatic perspective, we also need to look at it from an ethical perspective. Yeah, because it's a shared world, and then take our stance, right? So for all of it, we need to have well-informed peace positions, which are bound to be relevant for ecology and for our collective good as well. There is a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of ecology and peace. And let's also remember that peace cannot be aspired for when you don't have justice, right? We need to have intergenerational justice. We need to have multi-species justice. We also need to have distributive justice models. So those are requirements. And for all of it, we need to not see ecology as something that goes on a particular track and peace on a different track. They are on the same track.
Now I would like to talk about your recent project that you were doing on climate change reporting. And what exactly, can you run us how this project was going to change the lives of people in the campus, and what exactly happened? Is this project still going on right now?
So this was a climate reportage project that was sponsored by the United States Embassy in Kolkata. And the prime aim was to shift the journalistic discourse from more of climate anxiety to science-backed climate resilient action. So that's the larger vision. And the plan was to train the journalists to be the ambassadors of promoting climate literacy. So that was the outlook. And we were supposed to go to 8 different cities across India and thereby connect with the journalists in different parts of India and have rigorous training with right resource people coming from climate science background to climate storytelling background to climate journalism background and all that. And thereby, with the empowerment that the journalists could possibly have, we thought that we could rise the level of climate literacy, prompt more people to work for climate action. So this was the plan. And we had the first round held in Bangalore, and we had around 30 plus journalists come and attend the training. And thanks to the training, some of them have picked up really good stances. So the training did help the journalists to get a broader outlook and get the recent data and developments and work on meaningful climate stories. And some of them have done an amazing job, and that was very promising. But unfortunately, the project got terminated because of some of the shifts that have happened in the US governmental context in the past few months. So it got terminated. Nevertheless, we in the Department of Media Studies at Christ University, as part of the project, we had Dr. Meljo, Professor Joel, Dr. Jace Merlin, then Dr. Rola, Dr. Maximilian Martin. So all of us firmly believe that climate is something that we all have to work on, and we are applying for other projects and trying to promote. More importantly, we are offering courses in the department which help our students to get a very informed set of ideas about climate. So we offer a course on climate crisis, discourse and action. And for the undergraduate students, we offer a course on environmental journalism. And apart from that, we have Ecolectic, which is an environmental club through which a lot of initiatives are taken. And as part of the Center for Peace Practice of our university, there as well, we are picking up a lot of environment-related projects. So we conduct workshops. We hope that we can also play our own small role in promoting eco-consciousness.
So I did take that course last semester with you, Professor, the climate discourse and climate crisis. And I am one of those persons who never really believed that there was an issue. Like I knew there was an issue, but I was not ready to acknowledge it. And I
Probably
never,
the magnitude was not something you were aware.
Yes. And I did not understand why we should study a course like this in the master's level until I sat down in one of your lectures. And I still remember it very vividly. You talked about climate justice and how many people are actually being displaced of their home.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it made me think that it's not just political issue that we are currently facing. There is a climate issue that is there, and there is a crisis that we need to acknowledge.
Yes.
So you brought in so many examples over the past one semester that made not only me but all of my class, and we were 80 students along with 23 from journalism, and we all actually sat down and we thought that yes, there is an issue, and we understood the importance of that course. So how do you bring examples in the real life examples in your classroom settings, and how do you inspire young minds like me, because you do have a way with students as well, the way you teach? So how do you go about it, sir?
Oh, thank you for giving a very heartwarming feedback. This does encourage us to believe in what we are doing and do more of that. One thing that I firmly believe in is love for nature ought to be the starting point. Rather than bombard our students with a lot of data, facts, and set up a sense of fear and anxiety, we need to help them to acknowledge what's around them, that they could walk bare feet once in a while and feel the ground beneath their foot. They can touch water running in a stream and sense that power and the flow and the current and all that. They can probably gulp the air and realize that this is oxygen produced by plants. They can look at the stars and the moons and the sun and hear the chirping of different birds and realize that I am part of a bigger setup and not necessarily a human infested, if I may put it that way, a human infested world, right? So there is more to this world than just humans. And there is beauty and there is joy and mystery and magic with the way nature is designed. Once that awareness is awakened, then it helps them to see the world around us, value it, and work for it. So then sharing different developments with regard to how planetary boundaries have been crossed, what kind of impending disasters are there, and all those things, when we say, it makes better sense for them. But we also try to empower our students to believe that they need not be part of the problem, but they can be part of the solution. So that's the kind of approach that we love to take, and we'll be really glad if it works. And I hope it works in your case and it works for our collective good, of course.
Thank you so much, Professor, to give your insights on this. And it was a delight to listen to you talk about the climate and the issue.
Thank you so much for wonderful questions and for who you are.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
As cities grow, what gets built often overshadows what gets erased. Today's conversation with Dr. Padmakumar MM reminds us that climate action isn't just about science, it's about stories, memory, and media. We hope this episode made you pause, question, or look differently at your own surroundings. Don't forget to revisit last week's student-led report from Gachibowli for the full picture. And as always, stay curious. The climate story is still unfolding, and we're here to follow it. This podcast was hosted and illustrated by Vernika Singh and was edited by Srinivas Aditya. A special thank you to our favorite professor and a climate expert, Dr. Padmakumar. And for tomorrow's episode, we'll be in conversation with Dr. Amulya Rajappa, an independent journalist, as she takes us on a journey of how India's urban heat crisis is affecting lives. Please write to us and follow 4C Radio on Instagram and X. Until next time, be curious and ask questions. 4C Radio is an initiative by the Department of Media Studies, Christ University, Bangalore.